Saturday. It is indeed a good morning. My name is Clinton Paris, and I'm one of the co-hosts of Straight Up the Middle on In Touch News Radio. And, you know, we're a specialty station, so if you don't stumble on In Touch News by accident. So if you're with us this morning, I want to thank you. I want to welcome you. And I just say that how much I really appreciate all the people that take their time to come in and listen to the show and kind of check out what's happening and what we're talking about. And hopefully you get from it kind of what I get from it as well, which is a debriefing, so to speak, from a week of crazy stuff that seems every week, you know, can't get any crazier. You know, we are now into July 2021, and it feels like we were just facing off with last in 2020 with the COVID virus, something new to all of us that we were trying to get figured out. And we're already a year plus later. And there's so many things that have happened. And I just want to say I appreciate all the people that log in every day and spend some time with us here on In Touch News and talk about the things that are affecting us individually, our children, our families, our workplaces, our culture, our country, and the world. And we try to do that here in In Touch News by talking about world politics that drills down into our personal lives. And so I just want to say that this morning, thank you very much for doing that. And look, Pete is out this morning doing who knows what. For those of you who know Sweet Pete Edwards, he could be in anything, but he's not with us today. I think he had a funeral to go to. So we want to wish him well with that and welcome him back next week. But listen, I was able to drum up the professor. And I don't want anybody to say anything else about that. We've got the professor with us here live for a short period of time, talking with us. He's kind of taking a break from one of his classes this morning. Good morning, Professor Tony Seabrook. How you doing, sir?
Good morning. I'm having some video challenges. I know I'm having
Major demonstrations continue to rock Haiti as protesters demand that U.S.-backed President Jovenel Moïse step down from office. On February 7th, his constitutional mandate to rule ended, but instead of holding new elections or stepping down, he's just staying put. For almost 2 years now, there have been daily mass protests demanding Moïse step down over extreme corruption, including the embezzlement of billions of dollars for social programs. These demonstrations have been met with severe violence, many times with the assistance of occupying United Nations troops. But while Haiti has drawn the attention of the world, it's a good time to revisit the history of not just how Moïse ended up in power, but how the American empire has determined the destiny of the Haitian people for generations. Haiti, once known as the crown jewel of the...
And guess what? It erased the 16 cents. I'm paying $1 more in gas, Joe. What's up with this, man? These Democrats, let's go with this show. Let's talk about it.
Well, I mean, if you want to poke at the economy, what is your take on the Biden economy? I mean, you know, I feel like it's in a malaise almost. It's kind of, there's no real energy in any direction, so to speak. I mean,
well, if I borrow the left's mindset and how they wanted me to think when Trump came in, he was benefiting from 3 years of Obama, so nothing he did could work. So if I follow that, then I'd have to say this is Trump's economy that's kind of, you know, as you said, in a malaise. To be honest, the economy is not tanking, so I'm not going to be that guy to just take a swing at the Biden economy just because I can. We do know that it ticked up from 5.8 to 5.9%, so it didn't tick down, although some people, like I said, statistically it stayed the same. But that's not a whole lot to yell and scream about. But what we can talk about, in all honesty, is there are more people looking for jobs. That's kind of, if you read the background of the reports, there are more people looking for jobs, which is good. More people coming off the sidelines, right, getting back to the workforce. That's great. I guess the other part to this is we're paying more for gas, and I don't know this report. It was a Wall Street Journal article, so I'm looking at highlights of it, but it did talk about the there have been more people who voluntarily left their current employer for higher paying jobs, with more people looking for jobs. And I'm going to use the 16 cents. I'm going to beat on that because it's like, why did you even say that? Well, if I have to pay, because now people are going back to the office, right? Thank God for the red states who are always pushing for that. Thank God for Governor DeSantis. We'll talk about him a little later. But if I have to pay more for gas, then I'm just not sure what's going on. We always talk about, they beat Trump up about low-paying jobs. I need to hear the same drumbeat from Democrats when we talk about this Biden economy. Yeah, a bunch of jobs. It still missed the mark. But, 5.8 to 5.9, who's going to really argue that? But if you want to get into the fine details, it's not great. And I think that's what people are losing.
You bring us to key points. I watch the market. I'm, just trying to kind of get a feel from people. And I don't know that the economy is front and center right now. It doesn't seem to be the thing that people are, the gas price bump, everybody felt that, but we've had higher gas prices, we've had lower gas prices. I don't think anybody goes into a panic because they, see a few gas prices go up. I think the thing also, the economy, real estate is just crazy right now. Real estate prices, and they're doing something that kind of worries me a little bit where you have sellers who are selling homes demand that buyers waive their appraisal. So we don't care what the appraisal of this house is. I want to sell it for X dollar amount. We're going to have to waive that. But that's the only place I see a little bit of anxiety is on real estate prices. But you mentioned this about oil, and I want to stay with that just for a second is, do you think Biden's policies are what's affecting the gas prices? And
of course it is. Of course it is. Now, we talked about this when he came in, so although you reminded viewers, just in case you forgot about me, let me remind you, I shifted from the the spineless Republican Party after this horrendous election. But we know Biden didn't get 81 million votes. What we do know is Biden has to pay a lot of people back for getting his old butt in the chair after he had two failed.
Wait a minute. Wait.
I'm getting there. I'm swinging. I'm getting there.
So you just did two things in one.
I did.
You said that there weren't 81 million votes for Biden. So let's leave that where it is.
Mm-hmm.
And somehow somebody else paid Biden something else.
No, that's not what I'm saying. They helped them over. They helped him. Biden has to now pay back these people that helped him out. Pay him back in what? When you take money from certain interest groups, now you have to do that. So what did Trump accomplish? And one of the main things that people on the left, I think, and I know I'm just talking for people, will try to overlook the energy independence that the U.S. achieved under Trump, right? Exporting more oil than we import. But under Biden, what he started talking about, for the climate. So who's he appeasing? All his climate people, the Green New Deal people. He started, with his executive order, he started to do things that reduce our oil production. And guess what? Now oil prices are up, gas prices are up, and now he's trying to act like he's doing the right thing for the economy. Well, you just took a step back, and now we're dealing with high prices, inflation, and all that good stuff.
All right, so now hold on for a minute. So you're saying that he is helping oil companies make more money by having their products cost more because they helped him get elected?
No, what I'm saying is when he did his executive order in the Keystone Pipeline, isn't that why he's being sued?
Right, but economically, that benefits the oil companies.
Well, we're not talking about who gets the money. We're talking what happens to the economy. Now, because you guys on the left like to talk about big oil and how much money they had and blah, blah, blah. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about what he's done to the economy. So in the big picture, the reason why oil is going up, gas is going up, because he's taking a step back. He's trying to appease climate control at the expense of now, what's now happening. I think they said the average was $3.14 we're paying per gallon now. versus 2018 cents when Trump was in office a year ago. And that's only what? He ain't even been in office a year yet. So
I'm just trying to make sure I'm clear, but that seems like to me, if that policy has increased the price of a product for oil companies, the real beneficiary is the oil companies. And Tony, I'm being told by the studio that you're breaking up really bad on Facebook. So why don't we go ahead and take a moment while you go ahead and log back in. I won't go too far afield while you're gone. But I get what the professor's trying to communicate, and he's trying to say that the oil independence that we achieved under Donald Trump has been lost now. It costs more now for oil, and most people, you may not appreciate this, but petroleum is a vital ingredient into so many products like plastics and paint. I can't tell you almost everything that we have in our economy that we produce. There's a petroleum component going into it, and ultimately that will connect itself back to the price of oil. And theoretically, now the price of oil goes up. Now you say, so what? The price of gas is a little bit higher. Well, every dollar you spend to pay for gas or some other commodity, you don't have that dollar for gas. Every dollar you spend more on gas, you don't have that dollar to spend on something else. And also the higher price of gas, it builds itself in the fuel, the delivery of groceries. The price of fuel goes up, that price gets built back into the delivery of that product. And so now your tomatoes or eggs or whatever it may be, it goes up. So that price has a trickle effect. So everywhere you see prices connected back to the base cost of petroleum is, ta-da, you end up getting an increase in all the products, and theoretically now you don't have more money to spend on other things. And that kind of starts to have a drag and slow down the economy because you can't expand and spend in more places because that money is coming in. We've had the price, we've had gas prices go up over the years, go down. They're not skyrocketing. There's been a little bit of a trickle of gas prices, and I think that they're stabilizing kind of in the numbers where they are right now, particularly after we had the Keystone Pipeline. But the overall, my perception, the Biden economy is a little, he has kind of done something that, and we've got a professor coming back in now, he's taking his hands off the wheels of the economy, as opposed to Donald Trump every week decided, I think I want to sell motorcycles. I'll invite Harley Davidson to the White House and rev up a Harley. Oh, I want to promote this company. Come by the White House and we'll kick it around a little bit. So
what you're talking about is politics. You're talking about politics. So he went back to being the typical states.
Yeah,
drag the economy.
I'm just saying that you see more hands off from the president on the actual winners and losers in the economy. That's one component of, I think, the dynamic. But the other thing I wanted to talk to you about a little bit, Professor, this morning is something that is kind of interesting to me, and we'll see how this kind of plays itself out. And that is what I see emerging as a Republican strategy for midterms. Turnout is the key thing. You got to turn out votes, right? How do you know voters turn? Voters turn out to vote. People think that Americans vote to vote, and we don't vote to vote. You go to restaurants because you're hungry and you want to eat, right? And so typically when things are good, voter turnout is low. When things are bad, people are motivated to turn out. Well, guess what? Things are good right now. Really, they're good. Totally.
Things are good. Besides the gas prices going up. Okay.
Right, we're good. So I'm trying to figure out what's the Republican strategy, and I think I got a kit for it. It's called critical race theory.
And that's our strategy. That's Republican strategy.
I think to motivate the overall base. Now, let me watch me now. The overall motivate his base if he's somehow involved somewhere. That's Trump. But the overall Republican body needs a motivation. And I think the thing that will connect the Trump Republicans with the other Republicans is fear of the critical race theory being taught in schools. What do you know about that? I don't even want to get into what critical race theory is.
Well, okay. Well, first of all, I think that's the Democrat playbook on what they did with defunding the police. They started using that term, and then they started playing the word game. Well, we don't mean defund, we just said defund. Well, and then they tried to say, now they're trying to say, well, that was kind of a Republican thing, talking about that defunding police, when it was their talking point, and that's why they got beat up, other than taking the top spot, being Joe Biden, getting Trump out and Joe Biden in. They didn't win on anything else. And now we're back at the same thing.
You're kind of like what happened in Georgia doesn't count. We want the Senate.
Well, yeah, that's a split here.
I would get facts in the way.
Yeah, don't get facts in the way. They're convenient at this point. But getting back to critical race theory, I don't know how you can say that's a Republican thing, because we have blue states in the Trump, and as a matter of fact, now you have the biggest education teachers union coming out to help the Democrats in this whole critical race teaching in public schools. That's why again, thank God for governors like Governor DeSantis and there's some other states. As a matter of fact, I even hear Virginia, which is not so red anymore, right? They're pushing back on this critical race theory, because you and I talked about, and this thing blends in. Before I left the show initially, or right at that time, I remember Honorable Ed was talking about Trump's legacy. And you said, well, his legacy is going to be trash. How's history going to treat him? And my thing was, it depends. Democrat history depends on who's writing history. So we're really talking historiography. And that's the same thing that we're dealing with when I talk about that critical race theory with my contemporaries. That's the same thing that we're dealing with. We're not dealing with history, because history is pretty static, right? What happened, happened. We are dealing with how people interpret history. So Trump's legacy is going to be the same way. It depends on who's writing the history, and it depends on how they deal with the present. So everyone's history is really reflective of how they live and what they feel in the present. That's what they project on the history. We have the same thing with critical race theory. I agree with some of the tenets of critical race theory, and it's pretty much a blended theory. It was loosely formed. It comes out of a lot of earlier theories. We're talking Emily Durkheim, we're talking Max Weber, Karl Marx, we're talking those guys, 1800s type of guys, right? That's where this kind of stuff started, and it talked about functional theory. This is where critical race theory came out of the response to a functional theory. Where Durkheim was saying that institutions like education institutions have a function in society. We have to educate our citizenship so we can have pretty much a feasible and an active government. Well, then you had the conflict theorists, and this is where critical race comes from, saying, well, yeah, but the capitalists, the people that have the most money, they're running these institutions. So now they are now holding and using that against people of color, so disadvantaged people. Well, that kind of ballooned into a lot of other theories. But I just would caution people not to jump on this critical race theory, because everyone is really, not everybody, because I think there's some good intentions out there. But the problem that I have is we have people who don't want to take the time to actually look and form their own thoughts. They want to somehow jump on the smoking gun, what's hip, what's out there, what's going to get people going. And this is the Democrats pushing this, and they know the Republicans are going to fight back on it, and they know the route the Republicans are going to take and say, hey, they want to turn everybody against white people, or white people want black people back in. They should use Joe Biden's phrase, I don't forget anything Joe Biden said. They should start to say what Joe Biden said, oh, they want to put you back on the plantation. Crazy stuff he used to say under Obama. That's what Joe Biden used to say. That's how he tried to get his base right. And what the base, the black base, you say that kind of stuff to black people. Oh, yeah, these white Republicans. I'm like, a bunch of white Democrats do. I don't know why y'all think they don't have anything to do with this. But to get back to the point, because, I can be very tangential to get back to the point. To get back to the point, the critical race theory has its merits. But if you start to take it apart, because theories, no matter what the theory, it does not explain what is happening. Theories explain why things happen.
But you're talking in a reality. What I'm saying, though, is there is no reality about teaching critical race theory. What we have is people using it for political motivation and fear mongering. The same.
But why is the teachers union? And if it's so, you're hopefully you're saying that the teachers union, being one of the biggest blocks for the Democrats, are parading this thing out and defending why we should teach critical race theory.
Because here's what I hear repeatedly from school boards at the local level around the country. We're not teaching critical race theory. We hear that. But at the same time, we have the drumbeats from the Republican side saying, go to your school boards and demand they don't teach critical race theory. And now what you've got is you've got people threatening teachers saying, look, if you teach X, Y, and Z, we're going to come after you. All the union said is, look, teach what you've been teaching, and if there's somebody that brings legal action against you or whatnot, you get in trouble, the union will defend you and protect you. But I'm not questioning whether or not it should be taught, it is being taught or whatnot. I'm just saying, from a strategy standpoint, candidates on the Republican side are saying, look, you need to elect Republicans because we're going to stop this critical race theory being taught in our schools, so on and so forth. And I'm just saying to you, is that your read of what's happening on that side? You know,
that is not my read, and that is not the reality of higher education where I've been 15 years. That is not the reality here. And I'm glad that Governor DeSantis, and for all the listeners that you guys are going to look up HB 233, I'm glad you signed that, because you don't have to use the term critical race theory. That's just like someone said, you don't like me. You said, well, I never said I didn't like you, but you showed that you don't like me. You said some other things. Same with critical race theory. If I'm telling you that you're oppressed, I don't have to say, you know what, this is the part of critical race theory, and I want you to listen. I don't have to say that, but if I'm teaching you the tenets of critical race theory and just not using the term critical race, come on, who can't figure that out? So Republicans should be doing this. Now, I don't know how, matter of fact, let me think about that. I think they'd be pretty effective on this, because if you're not in higher education or you're not in education, period, yeah, you might take what Clinton said as the gospel. Well, people say we're not teaching it. They're lying.
What do you mean might take what Clinton said as the gospel?
I said if people if people said, since the counselor said he's talked with school board people and they have affirmed to him, Clinton, we're not teaching critical race theory. And if you guys want to believe that, fine. But I'll tell you, they're lying. So take it from the professor, and I'm glad that they can, because here's the thing, I've always operated as if a student is recording me. I never get into, I teach basic computer information literacy, I teach intro to management, and sometimes I teach general business concepts. None of those three subject areas require me to get into anything past HR. So we talk about employee motivation, how you motivate people. I don't have to get into feminism. I don't have to get into gender reveals. But a lot of people do that because it's their open. And I'm glad that he's done that, because we don't need to be, teach your subject. Be good at what you do.
All right, listen, Professor, I know I only have you for half the show today, so I got to get to the second topic, which I think is driving something in America. We kind of could see it coming. Mitch McConnell, he's at the Chamber of Commerce meeting in, I think it was Western Kentucky, and he stood at the podium this week and he said, I just don't get the vaccine hesitancy within the Republican Party. And what I'm really getting to is, I don't know, 97% of Democrats have gotten a vaccine.
What's that stat again? You broke up.
Like 97% of Democrats are now vaccinated. 42 or so percent of Republicans are vaccinated. And now we're seeing a rise in COVID cases throughout majority red states in the South.
They're lying again.
So now you fill me in on the, because I'm just going on what happened with Kentucky. And Mitch McConnell, I just don't get why there's a hesitancy in the Republican community to get vaccinated. Now, he'll tell me what the lies are. What's the lies? So we all know.
This goes back to the old playbook that stat you gave is awfully high because I heard it was 70, like high 70% Democrats and low 40s Republicans as far as being vaccinated. It's still a huge gap, right?
Those stats came out of a recent Washington Post article that I read.
Okay, but even with that, yeah, that's pretty high. I know some Democrats, and I know some that's been on this show who haven't been vaccinated.
Yeah,
the reason why
I know some too.
Right. So the reason why, because they don't believe it. You guys did a good job of scamming black folks. That's what it was, and that's why I was against it from the beginning when they had that approach that, right, Joe Biden or whoever said, we have to figure out, how to get these Americans.
I'm getting you right. You're saying that the stats are probably different. That means that the Democratic number is probably lower, and the Republican number is kind of probably high.
Right.
Now, it's
no.
Yeah, though, because what's happening is Arkansas, Mississippi, Alabama. You have this string right in there of rising COVID cases. Now, either that's happening, or you saying it's not happening.
I'm saying it's not happening. They're manipulating the numbers again. They're the same issue they had in the beginning. When people were saying when they had to come out and say be sensitive to people. Oh, well, don't go around someone that's older. People are starting to realize, well, these other diseases fell off. COVID was killing everybody like 10 and 1. There were no more heart attacks. There were no regular. There was nothing. Everything was COVID. Now, all of a sudden, Trump's gone, and slowly but surely, you know what? It's not so bad. Let's lift these mask mandates in a lot of these states, get people back. I mean, you guys didn't even take time to kind of get us back in. It's obvious now that he's trying to make it seem that, okay, Republicans are now the ones that are bad because they're the ones that don't want to get vaccinated. They're the ones that's carrying this disease now. I mean, it's obvious to me. The playbook is obvious. Manipulate the numbers again, stay on the airwaves, and still say, almost 100% of Democrats are vaccinated, which that ain't even true. It's probably 70%. I don't know how you get 97 because I thought it was really 70. For that to be 97, I don't understand that number at all. That seems like a lie.
Those are Democrats. That's not everybody. But I agree with you. I know some people who I think are pretty smart, rational people who say, I'm kind of waiting this out. I know there's certain religious communities where they kind of discouraged it so far. But what was interesting to me is that, and I guess it's always revealing to me, is whatever the numbers are, and those numbers are state numbers. Your states report what their numbers are. What you're saying is there is no rise in COVID cases.
States not to, because these aren't government labs. Government are running the labs.
Those are state health departments. The state of Florida tells the CDC its numbers. The CDC has no mechanism for getting. We have to do self-reporting, so to speak. So when we know that the CDC, we report X number of cases a day. And I think it's interesting. You would say, well, Alabama's lying. Alabama, and Mississippi, the health department, they're lying. They're not. Those are right.
I don't believe that it's gone up to the rate that they're saying. It baffles me that they can even, that no one else sees this. I think people do see it. All of a sudden, we're going into this 20. Everything is about 22.
We got 30 seconds, Professor.
Yeah. So anyway, I think those numbers are severely inflated to make the Democrats somehow look like they're responsible and Republicans are irresponsible. Don't believe those numbers.
All right, Professor, thank you very much for jumping in with us this morning. Hey, listen, we can't do the show without, support of people like you, and I really appreciate it. So, this week, let me know if we can get you back in next week. I'd love to have your commentary. We can both team up and see if we can take Pete down. Force him out of his delays that he is in. Have a great week. Good luck in class today. Thanks a lot.
All right, thanks. See you guys.
Okay, so listen, we're going to take a quick break, and then we're going to come back to the other side. We're going to talk about a couple of things. One, we're going to have a guest call in, Ed Ray. We're trying to work on also having another guest call in. I'm not certain we've got him confirmed yet, but we'll see if that can happen as well. And talk a little bit about what's going on in Haiti with my brothers and sisters down there. This is Intersection News Radio, reality radio. Everybody can be a star. We'll be right back after this break.
Try your family out and enjoy some of the finest amateur grill meats. Sample the sauce and find out who has the best sauce. Bring your meat and put it on a plate. And on your computer, it's a new world, baby, and we are Global In Touch Radio.
Oh, Ricky, ass Ricky, you need medical or a lawyer. I got the man to do the legwork for you. We tried the other ones before, so believe me. 100 down, 813 248 6300. Everything gon' be okay. Call Ricky, he coming. He taking kids, get on floor to grab a pen of sundown. 184 361 Rick. That's 184 361 425. Never word from the point forward, just recline. Just ask Ricky, push your boy stay fine. Just in case you missed it, I'ma tell you one more time. 184 361 Rick. Call Ricky, ask Ricky, the legal medical referral service. The doctors and lawyers in our network are trained in handling auto injury claims. And he the best medical treatment and recovery. Now 1-844 361 Rick. That's 1-844 361 7425. Ricky, Ricky. Ass Ricky.
Hey, this is Agent Wright, better known as Mr. Clean. Looking for some great barbecue? Come see them two brothers at the grill, located at 423 Virginia Street, Charleston, West Virginia. We got ribs, chicken, pulled pork, brisket, collard greens, mac and cheese, baby. Come get some and get you a nice, smooth cigar. 304-550-4431. That is 304-550-4431. Come get some, baby. The Rib Man, mama, the Rib Man.
All right, we're back live with radio, reality radio. Everybody can be a star. Everybody, please bear with us. We're having a little bit of technical issue with our sound. The studio is working that out, so we're just going to continue with the show and our wonderful conversation this Saturday morning. Let me say this, though, before I go any further. Last night I was out, took my wife out. We hit the town to attend the Fresh Fridays, sponsored by In Touch News over at 5508. And it was just a great event. There was live band. Tony Smith was there, and they even had a long-term musician by the name of Dash, playing with B.B. King back in the day, working the keyboards, and the whole group was just really, really nice. We had a really good time. Nice grown folks outing. But I just want to say this about Daryl and Tammy Johnson, the owners of In Touch News Radio. They do so much to bring ad culture and a dynamic impact on our community. This is also consistent, and I think in a lot of communities. But I want to encourage us to support these African American owned mediums. And it was interesting that you had two other radio stations present, regular WTMP 95.7. They were both recognizing the impact of this event. They had representatives there as well at the event supporting this event, but they did a great job, and they had Daryl and Tammy they add so much to our community, and it was just a really good time being out there. And they do this every first Friday. Every first Friday, 5508, 6 to, whatever time, we were there till about 10 or so, and it was still, going along live music, DJ, food and drink, and just a wonderful time. So I encourage everyone, if you can, to attend that kind of event, whether it's in our community or it's in your community. Excuse me. So I just want to say that also, if you're listening to me, you can also watch on Facebook. Just tune into Facebook Live, and you can watch the And in that regard, one of the things that really hit me this week is what happened in Haiti. That it really bothered me. And the reason it bothered me is Haiti has long been victimized by what America has done. And I want to quickly, if I could, bring in our studio, Anna. In studio, Anna, can you come on the line real quickly for me? Hello, Anna. Are you there?
Yes, can you hear me?
I can. You're really broken up. Are you able to play that video that I sent over for you to listen to about Haiti? If not, that's okay. We'll move along with the show or whatever. If you're not,
No,
I'm sorry, Anna.
no, we can't do it.
Okay. All right, great. So let's do this then. What I want to do is I've got a guest who's been patiently waiting on the line. I want to bring this guest so we can talk a little bit about a couple of things that are affecting us from our political spectrum, and that is none other than the former state representative Edwin Lorraine. Ed is a long-term supporter of the show. And you all know him because Ed has also been on the show and co-hosted the show. So Ed, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here. Y'all don't let me co-host anymore because the professor, I don't know, I think he got me blackballed. Him and his Trump friends.
That's doing a rotation, man. Look, there's a line. There's a line, man. Pump, pass. There's a line. Got to give everybody opportunity. But we need to get you back in to co-host. That was definitely something we'll do now. But anyway, good to see you. I hear from you this morning, Brother Lorraine. How do you feel today?
Let me tell you something. We're on a staycation here in the house. The kids are at my parents for the week. So my wife and I have been out to eat probably 4 out of the 5 nights that have gone past this week. So we're living like teenagers and realizing that we're 40-something-year-olds because it's taking us longer to recover.
That's beautiful, man. You know, we dropped off my daughter up at Florida A&M University a couple weeks ago. That's why I'm wearing my Fire Rattler shirt that she bought in AC. Wearing my Rattler shirt. I'm adding to the repertoire. But it's been very different here at the house because the kids are gone now. Very, very different. I would suggest you take your wife out if you haven't, Ed, to Mr. B's on Nebraska Avenue. It's a secret soul food restaurant that a lot of people know about. Really good place to eat if you haven't been there. It's right off Nebraska 26.
Absolutely. It's been a minute.
Now, when you heard about what happened in Haiti, what was your initial response?
So my initial response is that it was an inside job. But for that country, I mean, everything going back to the earthquake to now in recent memory, it's just the further destabilization of a country that has so much potential. Obviously, most Americans have a very dim view of the country. They see it as one of the poorest, but Haiti actually has a rich history and is significant to African American culture in that it's the first westernized country to actually overthrow the slaveholders that held them captive. And it's sad that we haven't seen the progress from the country that we could, but without some stability in government, I'm very, very worried about the chaos that could ensue.
Yeah, I mean, there's no doubt about that. Now we have reports that Colombia, the 26 of the 28 individuals were Colombian nationals out of the Colombian military, retired, and 2 were Haitian Americans. The 2 Haitian Americans said they were there to translate. That seems like a large number of people to expect to be able to go in and carry out a mission like this and nobody get caught. And nobody spill the beans. It just seems like to me there's more to this story that's got to come out. Now, here's my other concern is the president of Haiti didn't seem like that threatening a person, though. Why would be the need to execute? He was not very popular, so it means like you're going to have elections coming up. It seems like to me the fear here will be if you wanted to have American or international intervention in this situation, this is how you get it. I don't get the logic behind how this moves Haiti towards a stronger, independent country by having this guy executed. But that is what it is. Now, were you able to listen to the first half of the show, Brother Noreen?
I listened to portions of it. Yes, sir. Specifically, you gonna ask me about the professor's wackadoodle thoughts on inflation and blaming Joe Biden on the vaccine?
I'm drilling down into this use of critical race theory to generate fear and to motivate the midterm-based Republican side.
Well, that's exactly what it is. You know, you look throughout the history of elections in this country, there's always been a boogeyman. I can think back to, and I'll try to keep it, modern, but think back to George W. Bush in his second term. He literally, in a State of the Union address, said that gays wanted to get married. And that became the big boogeyman to motivate the Republican base, specifically the evangelicals at the time, to vote against John Kerry and his reelect. You see it often, more so in state politics, when your governors are running, they take an issue that people care about, or so they think they care about, and they try to make them care about it. So the interesting thing about critical race theory is that there's more laws against critical race theory than there are actually universities teaching it. It's never been taught through K through 12 in this country because you have to be specialized. You have to be educated in history, in African American history, and you have to have an understanding of how these things intersect with the legal framework our country has put together. This is something that's taught at Harvard, okay, by actual professors that are tenured, that have done research. This is not something that my wife, no disrespect, fourth grade elementary school teacher is capable of teaching her students without the proper background. So it's not happening in K through 12. It is not happening anywhere in the state of Florida. And even if it was, let's talk about that for one minute. What is wrong with talking about a different perspective of history than what people have traditionally thought? Isn't that what higher education is all about, to challenge your existing thought process, to make you a better critical thinker? It's ridiculous. It's nothing but a boogeyman.
You say that about this. I would say this. My daughter came home with the note this year, and it said she's in high school. She's a Strawberry Crest, and the note said that they were going to be studying the Civil Rights Movement. I thought that was interesting to me that there was a note that came home saying that. My wife said, "Well, what do you think about that?" I said, "Well, I think we've done a good enough job teaching our kids about civil rights, the history, the specifics of visiting, just places of historical relevance during the civil rights movement and things of that nature. And I had the benefit of visiting so many spots in Jack and Jill, and on vacation we go and check out something and things of that nature. So I was comfortable to say, look, I don't care what they teach because I know I've taught you what you need to know already. But if you go to households where that's not happening, I think a lot of our white households, they may not have really taught or had exposure to civil rights. I can see them getting afraid of what might come out of it, because what we're hearing the Republicans say is, your children are going to be taught that white is evil and bad and oppressive, and it should be, it should not be vilified. Yeah, it should not be taught. And I'm like, well, that's kind of weird. So there is some teaching of something, right? That makes sense.
Yeah, but let me clarify something. When the 1619 project came out a couple of years ago, I went out and grabbed probably about 5 copies and passed them around to some people that were interested in having them and couldn't find them. And I actually read it. And what people are upset about is that Hannah Nicole Jones, professor at Howard now, has actually taken American history and filled in the blanks. You can't talk about the founding of America without talking about slavery. And that is what the K through 12 history books have done for us. It's basically said some people got mad with the king, said we ain't paying taxes. They had a tea party. A couple years later, they met in Philadelphia, signed the document. John Hancock signed it, the largest of all, and then the United States was formed. Yeah, they disagreed. So a few years later, they had a civil war, but it was all kumbaya because it was strictly about economics. Martin Luther King, President Obama, and now Joe Biden is president. That's American history as it's taught through K through 12. We don't really talk about the accomplishments, the contributions of African Americans, indigenous people, and other people of color that actually built this country with their hands. Now, you know this, I know this, our children know this, but I think we take for granted that white kids and white Americans know it. We also take for granted that most Black people even understand our history. I was shocked to see how many people did not know anything about the Tulsa riots until the LeBron James produced CNN special started to hit the airwaves, because it's not taught in our schools. We are taught that Black people were strictly slaves. One day, Abraham Lincoln freed the slaves, and then Martin Luther King showed up and said, treat those former slaves and their families right. Barack Obama, and that's not African American history.
I absolutely agree that there's a lack of teaching of history, maybe because there's a lack of agreement of history, because we break the word and it's his story. It's not really what happened. It's what somebody chooses to tell you about what happened. But what role do you think this strategy by the Republicans will rally their base, and what will be a response that the Democrats should probably put forward?
So here's always been my issue with Democrats, national Democrats especially. You don't have to chase the car. The Republicans have jumped in the car and said critical race theory is going to be the biggest issue in 2022. What Democrats have historically done is chase that issue and try to defend it, whatever it may be, gay marriage, you name it. The facts are, until the Democratic Party itself comes up with an agenda that's rooted in things that middle America cares about, it's going to be difficult to hold seats that you win in presidential election years. So if I were running the party, for example, we would be talking about how we won post-COVID recovery, right? Yes, things are getting better, but we still aren't where we could be in terms of the economy. We've got a lot of people who were working low-wage jobs that have said they're not going back. So how do we get those people into new jobs that actually pay a fair wage? You know, the whole raise the minimum wage debate, we can have that over and over again. It's still incumbent on local businesses to make that decision. The second thing is we need to be preparing ourselves for a potential Delta variant becoming very, very powerful and impacting us. Again, I like that we're open, but the truth of the matter is we're seeing sky-high COVID cases that the media just isn't covering right now. There's an article in the Times today talking about how all of a sudden we're seeing a 27% rise in people being hospitalized with COVID again since things have opened up. Some of it due to the Memorial Day holiday, and now we're just coming off of the 4th of July. But until the party starts to decide it's going to lead on these issues, you're always going to be chasing the boogeyman that the Republican Party creates in the election cycle.
All right, listen, as always, the time flies by, when you're talking about interesting topics, and we're already at we've got about 5 minutes left in the show. The real reason I want you to come on this morning was to talk about our friend, Bobby DuBose. He is a candidate for Congress looking to replace Alcee Hastings down in South Florida. You held a great event for him here in Tampa, and I got wind that he is going to be coming back to Tampa first because our country is connected. The issues affecting South Florida affect Florida, North, Central, and this country. But I wanted you to come on and just kind of talk about, your feelings about Bobby DuBose for Congress and why you're supporting him.
So, Clint, let me be clear for your listeners. I'm highly biased. Known Bobby for 25 plus years. He's a member of our fraternity, Kappa Alpha Psi Fraternity, Inc., and he's just an outstanding public servant. I've served with him in the legislature. We were roommates in my final year together, and he's a family man, a Christian man. someone who I believe is the right choice to replace Alcee Hastings, who sat in the seat from 92 until his passing late last year. What we have to understand about politics, specifically as African Americans, is that we need voices that are not there to be served. We need voices elected that are there to serve the people. And Bobby, through his time on the city council, through his designation as leader of the House Democrats in the Florida House of Representatives, to now as a candidate for Congressional District 20, has always been a servant. And look, this is no slight at any of the other candidates in that seat, because I know several of them very well. But I believe that where you put your money is really where your heart is. And I'm telling you, I put some money up behind him, because I believe if he's elected to the United States Congress, he's going to have an outsized voice for our state. There are only, I think it's 5 minority access seats that were created in 92. What we have to remember is that you didn't have any African American representation from Florida in Congress until 1992, Clint. That's crazy. Prior to that, in the state house, we had seated our first state house members back in the late 80s in Tampa, in Miami in the 70s, but we didn't have any state senators until 1992. They were all the result of a lawsuit. So it's important to have the right people, because they truly represent the minority populations. So Frederica Wilson, you have our other frat brother, Big Al, up in the Tallahassee, Jacksonville market. Central Florida now, with Val Demings leaving, you have another open seat where Randolph Bracy is running. You also have Natalie Jackson and Aramis Alaya, I think it is, the former state attorney there, all black, running for that seat. But you literally have less than a handful of African-American access seats for Congress in Florida. And I want to make sure that Bobby is the one selected for that, because he's that good and will be great for our people.
I want to do this. I want you to, Ed, to give out the information, if you can, for the event, the date, the location, all that kind of stuff. I assume that it's just open to the public, but we'll find out soon. So, hey, I got the flyer, so we're going to put that out on the air. I had hoped that Representative DuBose would be able to join us this morning and kind of give us his insight and thoughts as he comes and visits the Bay Area. But we know as how we're part of a bigger body. As one part of our state goes, so goes the whole state, so goes the whole country. And that's why we think it's important that we bring voices like his and others to the forefront to talk about it. So, Ed, if you're able to, can you share with us a little bit more information about the event, date, time, location, and whatever else you want to share that might help people be able to support Bobby DuBose in this effort?
Absolutely. So this Wednesday, it's from 6 to 8 p.m. at the home of Danny McIntyre, which is in Sefner, not far, 9827 Sorbonne Loop, Sefner, 33584, from 6 to 8 this Wednesday. There's going to be a fundraising reception for Leader DuBose, and anybody who's interested can make checks out to DuBose for Congress. You know what? Any size contribution is accepted. You don't have to come there with a $2,900 check, which is the maximum you can donate to the campaign. It does have to be a personal check. You can't do it from your business. But you can show up with a $29 check, because believe it or not, $29 is a lot of stamps to get a message out. So don't feel like what you got is not enough. Every little bit's going to count.
Perfect. That is the home of Danny McIntyre. For those from Plant City, that's Danny K. McIntyre. 1982, I think, it is state basketball championship at Plant City High School. The address is 9827 Sorbonne Loop out in South Florida, 33584. That's the two-lawn subdivision, if I'm not mistaken, also. And I want to give a shout out to these individuals who stepped forward and put their name on the line to support this. Alonzo Barnes Jr., Herb Carrington III, Aggie and David Gaynor, Sakari Jarrett, Dr. Dexter Stallworth, and Tony Ware. So, Ed, thank you so much for joining us this morning. I appreciate it very much. We'll get you back in co-host with us. You've been listening to Intersection News Radio, reality radio where everybody can be a star. We will be back here next week, and stay tuned for The Sole Purpose at 11 a.m. All right, take care, Ed. Appreciate you, brother.
No problem. Have a great one. Yo.